This is a Toyota Soarer test pad that I've built. It consists of 6 buttons. Each button is doing a different function. The functions of these different buttons are up, down, left hand front, right hand front, left hand rear, right hand rear. In the boot of the Soarer there is a plug which you can plug all these terminals into, and as you can see there, 1 is the battery, 2 is right hand front, 3 is left hand front, 4 is right hand rear, 5 is left hand rear, 6 is down, 7 is up, and B is battery minus. So I'll plug this in and show you what it does. The only reason the LEDs are there is to tell you when that is actually being activated, and if you plug it in while your control unit is working, it will also indicate when the computer is controlling up, down, left, right, etc. Plugged it in, we've got 12 volts going in and a negative. So all we're going to be doing now is showing when it turns on. All it is doing is going between the positive and the negative, which is running the LEDs, but at the same time there's a separate wire going to each one of these panels. So when you push the up button, that turns the compressor on. When you push the down button, that opens the vent solenoid on your compressor reservoir. Now you have to do a combination to make it work, because this is left hand front, right hand front, left hand rear, right hand rear. So if you wanted to put the right hand front one up, you would put the compressor on and open the solenoid valve. If you wanted to go down, put the down, open the solenoid valve vent, and that will drop it down. When it's running for the onboard computer, you will find that these lights will actually light up as well, because the computer is activating each of those circuits. Quite a simple circuit to make. As you can see, it only has 8 wires. The push buttons are the main components. The other LEDs and resistors are only just to indicate that the button is being pushed.
Under the Soarer's right hand front mudguard in front of the wheel, you have the compressor, the unloader and the reservoir, and a couple of solenoid valves. Now your compressor is up under there. That part there is the intake for the air. Then it comes across to the filter, goes into the compressor. The compressor, as you can see, squashy, but the compressor, as you can see, has a line going across to the reservoir. So this is the reservoir here. On the bottom of the reservoir we have, that's the filter vent, and at the back of it, which is a bit hard to see because I can't get at it very well, is the solenoid valve. So we have 2 controls. We have a compressor, which turns 12 volts going to the compressor, which turns the compressor on, which pressurises the system, and we have the solenoid, which dumps the air out of the reservoir. These are our front solenoid valves. There is one for the left-hand front shock absorber bag and one for the right-hand front shock absorber bag. So for this to operate, the compressor is turned on and the solenoid valve on either side would be turned open. So when the valve is open, it is either going to be pressurised with the compressor or drained with the solenoid valve, which is dumping the air. In the boot, or the trunk in America, we have 2 solenoid valves. One goes to the left-hand rear shock absorber bag and the other one goes to the right-hand rear shock absorber bag. There's an air line coming into it, which comes from the front, from the air compressor. In the wheel well, on all wheels, we have a sensor, which is a ride height sensor. It's supposed to tell the computer where the height of the vehicle is, whether it's low, high, in between. On the left-hand side, under the on-off switch behind the panel, we have a socket, which can be used for testing, and that's what I made up the test system for. This is the test setup. So now we're going to run, which are all labelled, all these numbers. Okay, so I've plugged all the wires in. The extra terminal there, number 9, is for the computer. Now we have the ignition on. We should have, I can hear the compressor running. That's dumping the air at the front. That's opening the left hand front, right hand front, left hand rear, right hand rear. So they're all testing okay. By rights, if I want to drop this left hand side because it's a little bit high, left hand rear, I push the left hand rear, push down, and it should go down. It's quite slow, they're not fast. So we've switched it on. I have an aftermarket height control system, so if I turn that on, it will onto high, because it's set up on low at the moment. The problem is it's not staying low. If I set it on high, the compressor should come on and these lights should come on. So that's going back to normal, but what it actually is doing is compressor lifting the two back ones. Okay. Now it's lifting the left hand front. Now it's lifting the right hand front. Now the whole car is too high, so I'll take it back to where it was and see if I can get it to drop back down. This is the problem. I've changed it to drop it down, and as you can see, nothing is happening. So that's now bounce the car. Still nothing. Sometimes if we push the brake, it might operate. Nothing. So the car is much too high. So I want to drop it down. One of the big problems with the back of the Soarer is that the pipes are quite small, so it's not a fast process, especially when even when you're going down. Now it's taking it up again, which is the problem. I've just dropped it down to a nice ride height, and it's taken over. Turn it off. Turn it on. All these are regulated by the sensors on each wheel. And of course the ride height computer, which is probably where the problem is. Now I can set it with this, the problem being that it changes because the computer takes over when it's running. See, the computer's taken over there now and is lifting the back. It's taken it up to nearly 70 millimeters, which is miles too high, especially since it's set up on low. Now to be able to use the car, I could basically just switch off the computer and drop it back down to where I want it. That gives you an idea of what the controller does. This is the suspension control unit. That's my spare one. The one in the car that I'm using is in this under this left-hand side rear panel here, and the aftermarket controller setup, which gives you more versatility than just a high or low. The aftermarket unit has 4 different settings you can have, normal, and you can set 3 of your own settings. That actually hooks in here with a harness. It's got its own harness in here, coming through here. That hooks into this port from the suspension unit. In between that, the plug and the socket that goes onto the suspension unit. If you disconnected the battery overnight, that made no difference as far as trying to clear the problem I've got with the height being too high. I may end up having to just play around with the height control sensors. I have the computer disconnected, so they've got in the off position, and I'm basically just using this unit to adjust the height of the rear and front shock absorbers, and I will just leave it at that and just run it on that for the time being. It gives you a warning inside that the suspension computer is turned off. But yeah, I've just got a usable height. Okay, so I've done an upgrade on my testing setup here. Still using the testing setup just as if I need to, I can use the manual buttons on it. But what I have now, we've gone to an 8-channel
running solenoids, because when I used the buttons were getting quite warm because it's only very small switches, so they were getting quite warm when I was trying to have these on for any particular time. This will eliminate that problem. So the 12 volts will pull the relays closed, which are then getting proper decent sized wires isolated from the actual switching circuits, and this is actually used as a remote. So the whole idea of this is we'll have all those same channels on the remote. This is the plug here, so I'm going to pull it out so we can see it, and then I'll mark all those so you can actually see on the video which way they go for what, which one is 1, which one is 8. So this is the unit connected now to the car. I can still use these buttons which will fire the solenoids, but also I can use the remote, but it's an infrared remote, so it has to be a sort of line of sight. It won't really work if I put it outside the vehicle. So I can do the same thing. These are latched, pointed at, that's on, that's the compressor, down, and this becomes your left front, left rear, right rear. I've just moved the remote outside the car, and it's line of sight. So to use this, I will actually have to put it outside the vehicle so I can point the remote at it, but that's not a problem because it just makes it so much easier to look around the car than trying to have your head stuck in the boot here. Now that's it, the plug set up in the back here. I will get up a picture of what the connections are, because that was a bit difficult to work out, the way that Toyota label their 10-pin plugs, which only they're using 9 pins in that one.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.